Well, do keep those tweets coming in at the agenda_SABC. But let's get more details on that story. Authorities say more than 440 children were intercepted at Beitbridge border and have been returned to Zimbabwe. According to Border Management Authority, the minors were not accompanied by their parents or guardians. It's suspected these children may have been trafficked. 42 buses en route to South Africa were stopped and searched in a sting operation at the border post in Musina, Limpopo. It's unclear where the children originate from and where their intended destination was. But for more on child trafficking, we speak now to Bianca van Aswegen, who is a criminologist and national coordinator for missing children South Africa. Bianca, a shocking story that hit us this yesterday. I mean, your immediate reaction, having heard of over 400 children possibly being trafficked into South Africa, and we don't even know where they were going to end up.
Very true. This is once again, as the one person just commented, this is the tip of the iceberg. People aren't realizing how bad trafficking in persons is, not just in South Africa, but globally.
Yeah. So what is it that you think we're doing wrong here? If we're saying that this is the tip of the iceberg, 440 children is a frightening number for us to be calling the tip of the iceberg. What is at the root of the problem?
Well, we've seen that trafficking in persons, we have various types of victims when it comes to trafficking in persons. South Africa has been declared as a human trafficking hub by the US Department of State. So South Africa is seen as a transit, import and export country for trafficking victims. As we've seen here with these children, they're being imported into South Africa. So this has been coming for years, and especially now during COVID and lockdown. Trafficking in persons has actually escalated. It's put it out there due to poverty, economical crisis, children being online more. There's so many factors that come into play with the increasing number of trafficking in persons.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because what you're saying then, if you're even talking about children being online, that says that almost, I suppose, the entire sort of spectrum of society needs to then be playing a role. And if we could possibly maybe go down that list, right? I mean, there's something to be said about the work that needs to be done by authorities at our borders if the world knows us as a transit country.
Yes, but it's not just our police, it's not just our border patrol. We as each and every single individual in South Africa needs to be vigilant about this problem. We need to stand up and do something about this, because any person could fall victim to human trafficking. People that are just desperate for jobs, for instance, people have lost their jobs during lockdown and COVID that are falling victim to false job advertisements, for instance. So it's not just the poverty-stricken side to human trafficking or for people to fall victim, but it can happen to anybody.
Yeah, and so you're talking about what authorities can and can't do, but do we have the resources to just, I suppose, deal with the problem at our borders? I mean, if you've got 440 children missing, you certainly need a lot of resources at our borders to be able to manage that traffic, right?
Definitely. And I think our resources, yes, we do have resources, but not enough. We've got our specialized human trafficking task force within South Africa that is combating this. We've got organizations such as ourselves that are trying to fight against human trafficking, but there's always more that can be done. There's always more that can be implemented. And this comes from all levels that needs to be put together. We need to stand up against this. More training needs to be given to our systems, everybody that is part of the fight against human trafficking. So there's always more that can be done.
Any parent who's watching this and thinking, oh goodness, well, my teenager's got a cell phone and I don't know what they get up to when I'm not looking over their shoulder. I mean, what's the conversation we need to be having with our kids about, possibly warning them against being lured in by traffickers?
Definitely, and especially going into festive season and school holidays. So children are spending more time on social media and on their phones. So we ask parents and guardians to please monitor your children's social media use. Please speak to them and have an open relationship with them. Know what they're busy with. Have their privacy settings on these social media sites set properly. We need to educate them. We need to tell them what the bad out there is. For instance, if there's a person, they go under false profiles, adding them as friends on these social media sites, that already should be a red flag. Posting of photos of our children. I know we're only human, we want to brag about our children, but that could also pose a danger to our children. Yeah. But we as adults could also fall victim to this, so we need to be very vigilant.
Yeah, when we see children being trafficked in South Africa being the transit point, where do they generally end up? That's a frightening thought, but something to consider, right? What happens to these children once they have come through the borders of South Africa and possibly leave even through our ports, if possible?
Yes, it is a frightening thought. So it all depends on what the victim is actually going to be used for. So most of the times, if you think about trafficking in persons, human trafficking, people think sexual exploitation, forced labor. Those are the two things that pop up firstly in people's thought. But there's so many aspects to human trafficking. We've got illegal adoptions happening. We've got organ trafficking that is happening. We've got begging rings out on the streets where children are used and exploited to beg for money. We've got sexual exploitation, forced labor. So it all depends on what that victim is, the intention is what they're going to be used for, where they'll actually end up.
Yeah, do we have enough awareness that's going around? I mean, certainly not just in South Africa, because I think that if we're raising awareness just here in South Africa, one could argue that we're too late. These are over 400 children that need to hopefully find their way back home, and perhaps we can even talk about what happens to them now that they have been intercepted. But there's a sense that there's work that needs to be done before these vulnerable individuals even get to our borders.
Definitely. Awareness is being raised, but once again, as I'm going to iterate it, there's always more that can be done. But people tend to not want to hear about this problem that we are facing regarding human trafficking or a missing child in our country. People need to realize this is reality. This is what is happening. So if we don't stand together, nothing is going to be done. It's not just the responsibility of the police or organizations as ourselves. It's each and every person in South Africa's obligation to stand up to help us and the police to combat this problem.
Yeah, of course, we are getting reports that the Border Management Authority has deployed 380 more staff members to some of the busiest ports as we get into the festive season. And I'm wondering if perhaps we're focusing too much on those critical times, like the festive season, and that, for the most part, and you're a criminologist, you can maybe talk to this, right? That the criminals know when the authorities are out and about.
Yes, they do. I mean, these international rings, these human trafficking syndicates, they're clever. They know exactly how to operate and get away with things. So we need to start thinking about, not just over festive season, as you say, busy times. It's something that happens daily. It's not just a focus on certain times of the year. This needs to be focused on every single day.
Absolutely.
So yes, there's always means and ways how these syndicates operate. So we need to find the means and ways to fight against them, to stop this before it actually even happens.
Yeah, a very concerning story that, but thank you so much for your time, Bianca. We do appreciate it. Bianca van Aswegen is a criminologist and national coordinator for Missing Children South Africa.